start, it's a great honour and a privilege to introduce Annette Smith, and I've known Annette for many, many years, and a more dedicated practitioner it would be hard to find. Annette is a social worker and an accredited family group conference trainer and facilitator, mediator and family therapist. Annette has over 30 years experience in child and family work, having worked in Canada as a family therapist and more recently for FACTS as Director of Community Services for the Western and Hunter districts. Annette has a strong interest and experience in working with Aboriginal children and their extended family networks, ensuring that their voices are heard and included. She believes that the family group is an expert on itself and promotes active engagement, collaboration, critical, reflective, culturally responsive practice with a respect for social context and difference. So it's a great pleasure to introduce Annette.
Thank you, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. So my job today is to talk with you, not talk to you, but talk with you in this workshop around collaboration. I'm going to take quite a wide view of collaboration because collaboration really means partnerships and working together with a common goal. So I will interweave some of the work I've been doing with family group conferencing as well, because I think it really reflects the position I think that the family should hold around power and the decision-making processes for them. So with collaboration, we can think of collaboration. It's one of those buzzwords again. I think, who was the last presenter?
Darren.
Darren talked about collaboration. He referred to it. So it's just a simple thing around people joining together or agencies joining together with a common goal. And when you're working in child protection or child safety work, it's really around working for the safety of the children, young people and their families. And the definition of safety and well-being needs to be looked at very carefully. But the bottom line is within collaboration that the children are safe and their welfare and well-being is secured. So with working with families, I think language is really important. I'm going to be talking a little bit about language. I'm going to be talking about what might be helpful. This is quite a concrete presentation. It's not a strategic, even though you will need to look through a strategic lens within your organisations. I'm going to finish today with some really concrete points, if you like, or facts or helpful things for your backpack in your everyday working with families. My passion, if you like, is at the front gate work. I really enjoy working with children and young people and their families in the earlier stages of intervention so they don't get deeply into the system. However, having said that, children who are in out-of-home care really do deserve a very good service. So you'll hear the words, and I think there's been a couple of presenters talk a little bit about space, and I think it's really important that we do have space when we work with families, not only for yourselves but for the families. So we need physical, emotional and what I call practice space, so that we're not always in a hurry, that we have some time to reflect. And when you think you're working with families, they need that emotional space to actually digest and to be aware of what's happening with them and what might help them. So it's really around slowing down some of the practice we've got at the moment and moving sometimes from a bit of chaos, if you like, or crisis, whatever you want to call it, defensive practice, and really taking time to identify what might help families, and asking is very, very important. So that's the strategic lens. I think I've talking about that. We might go on to the next one. I'm not going to do a lot about theory, but really often the people you're working with, I think they may come to you in a period of crisis, and crisis theory does inform the work you do because it affords an opportunity around a lot of energy for families when they are in crisis to actually really want to do something about that. So crisis theory is really relevant to what you do, and you don't have to be chaotic with crisis. Crisis can be slowed down and looked as an opportunity to actually work. The other important thing is, I won't go into it a lot, is systems theory. It really does inform the work you do as well, because you work in multiple systems, including your organisational. And the latest one that I'm really do like is differential response or diffusion theory, which means that you can do something. You don't have to do the same thing all the time. You can do different things around the flexibility of the family system and what strategies they feel would be helpful to them. So often agencies too, we need to be working with professionals, because often they're preset around the work they do and the opinions they give. So we need to look widely, I think, around the work we do with families. No, I'll skip that one. So now we go on to language, and that's what I call watchwords. I hope this is helpful to you, because I think it's really important the way we actually work with families. The work I do and some of the families I've worked with over the years, and more particularly now in a training environment, it's really important to use the family's words. We need to get away from the institutional language that we've been using. You know, things like a mother, for example, may have a mental health. You know, that's a label that's put on, but we need to be able to say what that is. You know, she's unwell at the moment, and it could be anxiety, or it could be something else. So we really do need to take what I call a softer stance with some of the families we're working with. I'm not telling you what to do, just reflect on it, and you're probably already doing a lot of this. But a little more organisationally, a little bit more of a generous approach with families, and an invitational, inviting them in to say what they feel might help with them. And I do understand that, you know, the more isolated you are, the more risky it is. It's risk averse, so you have to weigh that up as well. But I think if you try this, it will be very, very helpful. So the things around empowerment and partnership and even collaboration, they embrace notions of user control and choice, and they're very much within the business world. They're both important themes, and they tackle social inclusion and agency accountability. So if you're actually empowered and you're working in partnership and collaboration, there's an agency accountability as well as a work accountability and a public sector accountability attached to that. So within language too, I think language, I was working with a family the other day in a family group conference, and there's a confidentiality agreement, and there's no way that that family would have understood that confidentiality agreement. It was full of legalese, it was full of things that they could and couldn't do, and rightfully so. It needed to be a confidentiality agreement. But what we have to do is to make them understandable. So confidentiality agreement protocols, they need to be humanised and they need to be explained to people so that they do understand it. Far too often people are agreeing to things, if you like, and they have no idea of what actually is involved. So putting people into boxes and categories is not really, and that's what language can do sometimes. It makes a label come alive, and it sticks with people for many years, particularly children, I think. If you read about children, and labels will grow with them over the life of their involvement with agencies, so we need to be very, very careful. So, as I say, using simple language. Change language is really important to be inclusive and based on constructive engagement. You must have critical and honest conversations as well with that, and sometimes that can be really hard. Particularly sometimes with younger children, it's very hard. So really looking at concrete questions and open-ended questions. Why are open-ended questions really important in the work you do? Sorry? Free narrative, yes.
It saves judgments and assumptions.
Yes. So you're eliciting information and you're amplifying things, and you're not really blaming. So it's inviting the client to give their views. It's not just a yes or a no. More and more in practice now, there's more grey. So things like open-ended questions will elicit some of that information. We need, the work we do also, I think, to be quite humble. And we need to be curious, and curiosity's been bandied around for many years now, but we need to have curiosity with purpose, and it needs to be productive curiosity. It can't be just sorry? it can't be a fishing expedition. If anybody's familiar with Morrison's work, he talks about what we need to know, not what we want to know in order to do our work, and that's a very important distinction. So it's a professional point that's very important in our work, and our clients and families do deserve privacy as well. So key to increasing involvement is really using very, very simple language. It's very important also that we use language that presupposes change. I think a couple of speakers, it's no good going back into the swamp of past history, past detail, deficit-based practice. You need to really, or we need to look at what's happening now and what needs to change, and how your job is to often help them to make that change. So the wrong words can lead to, if you're using wrong words when you're working with clients, it can lead you in what I call a cul-de-sac, and you can keep going around and around and around. So what you need to do is to use positive language, and not if you're going to do this, but when you're going to do it and how are you going to do it. So we're presupposing change, we're looking at the positives, and we're also, I think somebody else mentioned it, we're looking at the presence of something rather than the absence of something. You need to reflect on that, because it's not what they're not doing sometimes, it's what they are doing, and we need to work with that. So, as I said, language is really more important. Words like hever and but are not very helpful. Why do you think that might be? However and but. You've done well, however, but. Sorry? Yes. Well, they invite guilt and blame. They bring you into another arena where you're doing all this good work with people, but all of a sudden you're saying but and however. So you really be just aware of those little things. So and else are magic words. Not however and but so and what else, or else. Why do you think that is? So. Yeah. It doesn't close off. It amplifies things, and it gives you a bridge to go to another area, if you like, of things and solutions as well. So we don't use words like uncooperative and resistant. We will frame those into something more positive, where they have anxiety or they need some help to do this. Even the word support is a motherhood word. You need to really think about what support means, because I think it's really alive and well in the industry, but we need to say what it means, and it could mean some help with something else around that. So people really, when we're working with them, they often are themselves, and if they are themselves, it's really good. A little bit of pushback's good from them. It shows that they have energy and that they invested in a solution. So when you're working with people, use praise, but label the praise, not things like you're doing well. Be specific about what you're doing, because you can become patronising as well. You're doing really well. It just means different things to different people, but it means you should be saying something like, perhaps, well, we could say, it was really great the way you did whatever you did. So attach a behaviour or an action, if you like, to, so moving away from generalisations with families to things like, I'm really pleased you were able to go to the gym today, or whatever, or daycare, or whatever it is. So, and that particularly is important in neglect cases, that last point. Be specific and be clear about that. It was really great that you were able to go to the family support service today so that Johnny could play, or you're really good that the head lice is gone and you were able to go to the chemist, or whatever else. You with me on that? Yeah, good. And also, besides the labelling, is what we call empathy and empathetic persistence. So you really, does anybody have a view what that might mean when you're working with families? Yes. What's the difference between empathy and sympathy in your work? This table's some up here. You're doing all the work. What's the difference between empathy and sympathy? Yes, good, yes. 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 You're not going into the swamp with sympathy, with empathy. You're really walking in their shoes, and you have empathy, professional empathy for them. But when you get into sympathy, often you're getting into feelings and you're personalising things and emotions. So in your work is really important to have that empathetic persistence, if you like. I'm not going to do ethics, so we'll go over to 13, I think. No. Oh, sorry. I won't do culture, I won't do ethics. I'm going backwards. So when you're working, it's really important also when we're working with families that we're really clear about why we're there. We're just not there to have a cup of tea, are we? We're there for a purpose, and we're there to assist, if you like, or help navigate a process around what the referral says or what you're doing with them. So it's really important that we actually pay attention to purpose and why we are here. And often the relationship between the people who refer the matters to you and you as the workers or the organisation is crucial. It's around that collaboration that we talked about. Need to collaborate and have a good relationship at an interagency level and at a professional level, if you like, with that. Avoid, we've already talked about that, avoid too much detail in history. You'll get into the swamp of relationships, you'll lose your, often from my experience, you lose your professional edge and you get into what we call probably a bit of a rescue thing, and you take on far too much with the work that you are doing. So it's really important around those professional boundaries. And I'm sure that can be quite difficult sometimes in your work to do that, and not to tell people what to do. So with the work I'm doing at the moment, it's very much a needs-based approach, asking the family what they feel they need, what will help within the bounds of child safety. And there's always a bottom line and non-negotiables, isn't there, with child protection work? Yeah. So avoid too much detail. Navigate process, not content. By that I mean you're navigating the process to come to an end, and you're not getting into too much detail there. And you work in partnership with wider families, and you're self-aware and ethical. Why is it important to be ethical in the work you do? Got a code of conduct and ethics? Why is that important? Came up yesterday in a focus group. What? Yes, professional boundaries, yes. Years ago, a caseworker I was working with got into trouble because he did a home visit at 9 o'clock at night, it wasn't a professional. He said it was a professional visit, but he did really clearly breach the code of conduct and ethics with the organisation, and placed him and the organisation, if you like, in a difficult situation. So now let's just have a little look at case plans. I was given the brief that you might want to have a little look at case plans. So as I just said about purpose, with case plans you need to be clear about the agency's worries and the bottom line. When you go into families, do you say what's non-negotiable, or do you have any statements like that? Or what needs to happen? Yes, what would that be?
What needs to happen and allocate the task in a timeline.
Okay.
What we're worried about, what we're concerned about, what we need to see different for the safety of children.
So very much being very clear around purpose, why you're there, what are the worries for the family, what are the worries for the children, and what can help the children in that situation. So plans should be rich and safe with the family's ideas about what needs to change. It's no good sending somebody off to even a parenting course, really. One of the matters I was working with recently was a young fellow who was an ICE user. It was a family group conference referral, and they had a number of children. They had about 6 children who were on the brink of coming into the care system because of, and there was domestic violence and family violence as well. But there was a stipulation that he had actually had to go to rehab and he had to do all these things. There was a shopping list of things, and he just said no. He said no, which was quite provocative because that was one of the non-negotiables that he had to attend to his ICE usage. So he went off, and it was partially successful, the conference. The children did go to other family members to live. They didn't have to come into the care system. But 2 weeks later, he contacted the local community services centre and said, "Here, this is from my doctor. I'm on urinalysis, I'm clean, I'm going to continue to have urinalysis through my doctor, and that's the choice of the service that's going to help me, not being away from my children and going into rehab." So do you get where I'm coming from? It's really not imposing things on, and it's very hard in the work we do. I'm still, in family group conferencing work, for example, the decisions come from the family. There's a clear bottom line about what the family needs to do to stay off drugs or to care for their children, or their children must have 3 square meals a day, etc., or 3 snacks or something like that. But how they get there is really up to the family. So the work at the moment is around working with the family, identifying for them to identify the solutions and the decisions they think that can help their family. Because imposing things on people often leads to what? Up the back there. If you're telling people what to do, what normally happens? Sorry? Well, that's good. Disengage, yes. What else? Do the opposite, sometimes, yes. Sorry, I can't hear. Conflict, yes, yes. In other words, they don't own the solution. What if somebody told you what to do all the time? How would you react? So in this work, you're very much also walking within the family's shoes, and you're really identifying with what you think might help them so that they can do that. We use plain language. We write less, and we ask more, and we talk less. We're very good at talking, aren't we, when we're working with families? I think we can easily over-talk. So really not over-talk, but listening and taking some pauses with what. So it takes more time, but it's far more engaging for the people. You get a lot more out of them, and they will be far more willing for you to be in their lives around that. And even writing less sometimes is important. I think often organisations write a whole lot of things, which really goes around that cul-de-sac idea as well. You know, so really it's important that we are efficient in what we do. Plain language, as I said, linked to what the agency would like to see. That's the bottom line of safety, and really making reasonable adjustments for special needs and perhaps culture. You need to be able to work within a context that meets that environment of that children. So if you're working with a woman like Helen and you're meeting with her, you know, you would ask her just things like, you try to be really inclusive with her, ask her what her understanding is of why she's there. What, you know, if it's a family group conference, what are the reasons for? This is really a portable way of working though. It's asking and clarifying with the family what their ideas are and what their understanding is and what their expectations of it is. So you're invitational in that you're asking people what they think they need or what needs to change for them to be able to do whatever the presenting issue is within in the work we do. So how do you benefit? You're pushing for change all the time, you're presupposing change. It's around a lot of strengths-based brief work. You know, Helen as a mother, what will your child Billy be seeing when you're actually not using drugs or you've been clean for 6 months? What will your family look like? You know, so you're planting seeds all the time. of optimism and pessimism within families, and of course looking widely in the family system. The current work at the moment is a lot of that finding family. I don't know if you've heard about some of that work where Kevin Campbell from overseas, he's doing a lot of work with facts actually. It's around how many people are in children's lives or young people's lives. And he says that up to 47 people can be in a young person's life if you go really widely. You start with 10 and then you build and build and build. So he's very anti the state becoming involved in children's lives in the care system. He says that the state doesn't really sometimes careful, and so that's a emerging way of working in America at the moment. He's doing a lot of work with that. And being clear, if you've got a referral from facts for you to work with the family, being very clear about what's negotiable and what's not negotiable. You know, they need to be able to understand what's happening in their lives. Just quickly a word about professionals. When you're working with professionals, I don't know, do you have many referrals out here? Are you working with psychs and social work, things like that? Encourage just everyday language sometimes if you're comfortable enough to do that, because families don't understand a lot of the jargon or the written institutionalised language within organisations. So you're there to help the family. So maybe just say, can I clarify what that means or something? You probably do that already, but it's really important that they understand what's actually happening with that. And sometimes the professionals, they're used to very much being the experts of a situation. So when you're working with them in this way, it's important that you guide them around, if you're confident enough to do this. It can be tricky sometimes, but you know, just to check for understanding and making sure that the family does understand, and could you really break that down into simple language for Helen or whoever it is. Yeah, and when you're in meetings, always consider the number of professionals at the table if you're having agency meetings or whatever. I might just talk about this. It's really important when you I don't know, do you work with aggressive people? Yeah. Yeah. Silly question. Or anxious people. So it's really important that emotional intelligence stuff that we talk about, that you do remain calm, but don't fall over too early, too quickly, particularly with father or male inclusive practice, because often men are quite angry. I'm generalising a little bit here, but just don't fall over too quickly and walk away. Try and stay with it for a while, stay calm, give a little bit of space for the person to actually be able to say what he is anxious or angry about, and see if that then can diffuse some of that situation. Because historically there is a gap in what we call father inclusive practice. We often work with women very, very solidly for a long time, and then we can get into a mother blaming situation as well, because she hasn't been able to deliver or provide whatever is supposed to through no probably fault of her own. So with things like family finding and family group conferencing, fathers must attend. There is a non-negotiable really that the father has to attend the conference, even if he's in jail or something else. And they respond very favourably to that, unless there's really severe domestic violence. There's a couple of overrides there, and where the woman, mum wouldn't feel safe, but there has to be very good reason to exclude people from being at the table and telling their story about that. When I talk about father inclusive practice, what's the other bit of social capital behind fathers? Yeah? The network, grandparents, aunties, uncles, etc. So we have no right as workers to deny, if you like, children and young people that. So staying calm, facing the person is really important. It's just a general helpful hint. Because if you face the person will think that you are interested in what they're saying, and you're not disinterested. So use your hands a little bit too if you feel that someone's getting a little upset, or could you just wait a moment please till we go on to another one. Leave space. People need emotional space to actually think about what you're saying to them. It's a pretty big deal when services come into families and work with them, so it shouldn't be rushed. It needs to be very genuine and respectfully spaced, if you like, around that. And then again, of course, you're watching for escalation. Why wouldn't you be arguing or raising your voice with an angry client? You'll escalate the situation, that's right. So case plans, even case plans really, children are a case, are they? Or families are a case. The word case is, it could be pushed to mean something that it's really not. It's a label in itself. So maybe just a plan or something for the children and young people would be a better way of working. And we need to use words like worries and what's actually happening for you right now in your family and what do you think might be helpful. I'm really interested in what you have to say. And just leave it at that, and you can see people thinking really within their own minds about, well, this might be helpful and you could think about this. So really drawing their own solutions from the client. So you co-constructing safety plans when you're doing that. You're not imposing. There's a lot of ownership with families in case plans or plans if you actually invite them to have their own ideas. And you engage for safety around the what ifs. What if something happened here? What do you think you would need to do in order to? So it's around some contingency planning. Are you doing case plans? Yeah, I was told that you might need, that might be helpful for you. So learning from success takes practice, and there's nothing wrong with being a little humble in this work. Things like saying, I'm sorry, I don't really know, can you help me out here? It demands a letting go of some of the power. There's no question that you have power when you go into families. Even Fax certainly has power, but even you as an agency has power. It's no denying it. You can't deny that you don't, but it's how you use it. The how is really important around that. So using it in a respectful, calm way, in a non-judgmental way, is very, very important as well. So what's your mood and your voice tone when you're talking with families? That calmness is really reassuring when you're going in and working with families. And use creative ways with families. You might say, oh, I never thought of that. They've got some idea, and you could say, well, I never thought of that. That sounds great, tell me more about that. And finishing always in the future. Why do you think that's important, finishing in the future?
It's hope.
Hope? Mm-hmm. What else? Moving the family forward? Yeah. Sorry?
There's a plan.
Plan. Yeah. It's hope. It's giving them something. What would you like your family to be in 6 months' time? You've agreed to do this. Tell me what your family will look like. So you're painting a picture of the future that's full of hope and change. Always, and this is a bit tricky too, keep appointments, don't cancel. It's really a thing that in this way of working that's really important. Do you have to cancel appointments much or move them? Gives the wrong message to families in a way. So just be aware of that. Being on time, keeping appointments are really just general things that you'll get a lot more benefit from the people you're working with if you can do that. And hear from consumers, you might want to talk to Mary. I was working with her last week. She thought this was great, so you're really rippling and spreading across good news stories. And modelling opportunity for sharing success. And what I call dance to the space, so really working with the families in their own space around what they're doing. Just see what I've got here. So that co-ownership, as I said, is really important in working with families. Within family group conferencing, the model really rests on. Has anybody had anything to do with family group conferencing? Yes. trained in it, or?
No.
Yeah. It's really around handing the power back to the family, and I think it really is very, it marries well with Aboriginal culture, because families can actually decide, and it also aligns with the Child Protection, Care and Protection Act around self-determination, when people can decide what is actually important for them. So within the bottom line of family group conferencing, the family are the experts. They can decide. They go into private time within their family systems, and they make decisions about what's actually going to go in their plan. So it's a little bit a different way of working, and I think that it's going to become more and more with the courts thinking about that way of working as not, because often families will, if you put solutions and your own ideas always onto them, they will continue to represent themselves in some sort of system, because they don't have any ownership of those things.
Is there any mediation around that process?
Sorry?
So the case consultation, so the ones that I've recently heard about, so where the families are left to have those meetings on their own, is there a time or is there a mechanism for a mediator within that process if needed?
No.
So it's just totally, what if there's a lot of conflict or family violence?
Well, that's already... Do you want me just to quickly go through the stages of a family group conference? Are you interested in that as well? Instead of just yes or no? So you would get a referral. FACS would refer maybe if you had a trained facilitator in your organisation, whether it's Centre Care, Family Support or whatever, and they'd say, if you're a trained facilitator, we've got this matter, we want to refer it across for a family group conference. So you would meet with that referrer. That's where that good relationship is really necessary. You would meet with the referrer and you would say, yes, this is, I'm happy to take this. So you're an independent facilitator, you haven't been working with the family. And you would go in and they would provide you with a referral form and a genogram or an echogram. And then as a facilitator, you would be contacting widely all these family members around them. You would be meeting them in their homes. The key to good family group conferencing is preparation work. So that's the main thing that you would be explaining. You would be asking, certainly a lot of asking, what do you want out of this? What's the purpose of it? What's your understanding, etc., etc. Really encouraging them, because often when it gets, these referrals get to they're pitched pretty high sometimes at that front gate. You know, where is Lucy, 8-year-old Lucy going to live? She can't return to her mother or father at this time because maybe mum's in jail or something else. So you're really going out widely and you're doing a lot of legwork as a facilitator around the preparation stage. Then you would come to a meeting about 3 weeks later, and you would invite the whole family around a meeting, including the professionals. And the professionals would be at the table and they would say things like, well, I've been working with Lucy for the last 6 months. That's where I mean about managing professionals as well, not getting into pathologising families, being very hopeful. So I've been working with Lucy for the last 6 months. This is what I've been doing, and this is, I think, where we're going with the work we're doing. So you hear from the professionals, you hear from the family, you hear from the referrer, which is usually a caseworker, about the bottom line. So it would be something like, Lucy cannot go home for at least 6 months until mum and dad, we've usually got alcohol, drugs or something else, until they attend to that and they're able to demonstrate that they can care for Lucy. So then you would say as a facilitator, right, you as a family now have your private time. So you they go into another room or they stay in the room, and the professionals have left, the caseworker and the facilitator, you as a facilitator, would be waiting outside that room. And the family are inside the room and they're making decisions about, within their family network, about where Lucy's going to live, for example, who's going to take her to school. So they come out with a plan around Lucy. And that's then presented to the referrer, which is usually FACS, and it's your job as facilitator to help the family explain the plan. So as long as Lucy's safe, the plan should be acceptable. Lucy might go and live with Auntie Joan for 6 months whilst, you know, and so you're pulling family capacity and capital together to ensure that Lucy remains within her family system. So that's just a very big, a brief snapshot, if you like, of that. Yeah. So that's just a little taster of that. Why do you think I played that video?
What will you do to be going without
Yeah. And just ask people, if you do anything, ask them what they think might be helpful for them instead of imposing actions, jobs, tasks, etc. It's a very simple, don't over-engineer it. Within safety and well-being of children, asking what might be helpful, because it's clearly, the latest research is clearly showing us that we actually need to ask and we need to find out what will be helpful for families in a culturally respectful way, etc., etc. So, oh, sorry, I've forgotten my microphone. You can probably hear me anyway. So what's all this got to do with collaboration? So if you work collaboratively, if you work collaboratively with people in a collective way, you'll introduce hope and you'll introduce a picture of the future. Future dreams and hopes are really important for families. It moves them from the here and now into another space. So the way you actually work with them and engage with them is really important. And it also encourages introspection of behaviour and communication. So when you're actually working with people in this way, it causes you professionally to be a little bit introspective about what you are doing and what might be helpful for families. And it's an opportunity, each family you go into, I always think it's a real privilege to work with families. It's very, very difficult, but if you come from a position where it's a privilege to work with families, and be very careful of what's in your kitchen, I call it. How do you talk about families? You know, you should be talking about them all the time as if they are in the room and they can hear what you're saying. So that respect is very, very important around that. And collaboration quickly does demand efficiency. You can't collaborate and collaborate and collaborate, can you? You have to have some efficiency within that. So it has to be some involvement in a time-based way. Allow people to push back. You're often working or we work with vulnerable people, and some restlessness from families is really good because they are struggling with things. So give creativity a go. Talk with families about, hey, you know, let's give that a go. That sounds really good. They're owning it. You must be tired sometimes of being the experts. It's very tiring to have that load on your back all the time. So with this way of working, it's really more of a cooperative within the bounds of safety of children. So really step out sometimes, listen to clients, and I just say let the magic begin. So thank you.
Okay, gang. Any questions for Annette? It's always wonderful to hear from a seasoned practitioner. It's also known as an old boiler. Yeah. Any questions for Annette?
It's fine.
I know that there was, by reading people's body language, there was quite a bit of interest in the family group conference. Is there anything else that you wanted to know?
results? Like what are the results if you're looking at 6 months, 12 months down the line?
It's too early at the moment. This was family group conferencing was introduced about 8 years ago, I think, and then it wasn't, because it's top down some of this stuff as well, it needs to be marketed and modelled at the top, but there is a very strong commitment now to do this. The model is very embedded overseas, particularly in England. People can work off the street if you like and say, I'm in a bit of trouble here, could we have a family meeting or a family group conference? In America, particularly the Netherlands, it's a very big part of practice, and Sweden as well. The leader though is New Zealand. It actually originated in New Zealand, the model, where the Maori people wanted to have more charge and more say about what's actually happening to their children within colonialism and people making decisions about their children. So I think that was in the early 1980s that occurred. So New Zealand is the world leader and very regarded within the family group conferencing model.
Any other questions?
we're ready to go home. I think you've, sorry, I forgot your name. Jackie's done family group conferencing. Do you just want to say your ideas of what the difference it might make, Jackie?
I did family group conference training with Annette actually through United, which is one of the places that provides the training. And although I haven't done a family group conferences yet, I do use the skills in pretty much every day. And more recently we've been talking about introducing a certain part of that as pre-case planning. So when there's a lot of conflict between family members or family members and carers in particular, doing that where, you know, it sort of can hash out those issues and put the ownership and accountability back on the family before we then go to the concrete making of the plan, if you like. So it's really, really a great model, and I hope that it does take off and we're using it all the time because it's really helpful for both families especially.
And just quickly, I'll just say a quick comment. The model really clearly says that the children belong with their families. You know, in most cases, there's an override to that if there is really, if they can't, a very small proportion of children can't live with their immediate family, but then it pushes out to those wider systems, if you like, and it models good citizenship and good social capital where people actually care and value about children so they don't have to go into state care.
Okay, any other quick questions or comments? Gone. Okay. And then on behalf of the committee, we just want to give you a token of appreciation. Thank you.